I bought my apartment at 25 and thought I finally made it. Then a $37,000 collection letter arrived with my name on it, from a loan I never signed for, taken out 7 years ago while I was sleeping in my childhood bedroom. I used to think I understood my parents. Not perfectly, nobody does, but well enough. I knew they'd struggled. I knew the years when my father's small contracting business was hemorrhaging money, when my mother worked double shifts at the hospital billing office, when dinners were quieter than usual because the adults at the table were doing private math that the kids weren't supposed to see. I grew up in that kind of household. The kind where you learn early that money is a source of stress, that the walls have ears, that certain conversations only happen after you've gone to bed. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that some of those conversations were about me. Specifically, about what they could take from me without me noticing. I'm 26 now. I work in IT infrastructure for a mid-sized logistics company. I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable in the way that feels earned, because it was. I moved out at 21 with almost nothing, shared an apartment with 2 roommates for 3 years, ate cheap, learned to code better on nights and weekends, got a better job, then a better one after that. By 25 I had enough saved for a down payment on a small apartment. 1 bedroom, decent neighborhood, $136,000 that I paid for with my own salary, my own savings, my own credit score that I'd spent years building from zero. I was proud of that apartment in the way you're only proud of things you know cost you. I'd earned it. Nobody gave it to me. Then a letter arrived. The letter. It came on a Tuesday afternoon in February, wedged between a utility bill and a pizza place coupon. Plain white envelope, return address from a collections agency I didn't recognize. I almost threw it out. I'd gotten debt collection mail before for previous tenants. But my name was on it. My full legal name. My current address. Inside was a formal demand for payment. $37,000. Broken down as $28,000 principal and $9,000 in accumulated interest, late fees, and collection charges. The account had originated 7 years ago. The creditor was a personal loan company I'd never heard of. My social security number was printed at the top of the page, correct to the last digit. I read it 3 times. Then I went and sat on my kitchen floor for a while. I had no memory of taking out any loan at 19. Not a vague memory, not a memory I could chalk up to a youthful mistake I'd tried to forget, genuinely no memory. Because I hadn't taken it out. I knew that with the kind of certainty that arrives before you even have the evidence to support it. You know yourself. You know what you did and didn't sign. They took out a $28,000 loan in my name when I was 19, without telling me. Now it's $37,000 with interest, and they want me to either pay it or give them my apartment. I'm being asked to fund or sacrifice for a crime committed against me. I know the correct order of operations. Check the facts first, confront second. So I pulled my credit report before I called anyone. It was right there, the delinquent account, flagged for non-payment, in collections, tied to my social security number and a signature that wasn't mine. My credit score, which I'd assumed was solid enough to have bought my apartment on, had actually taken a significant hit. The apartment purchase had used a report pulled in a window that predated the worst of the damage hitting the major bureaus. I'd gotten lucky with timing and hadn't known it. The luck had since expired. The damage was now fully visible, growing like mold behind a wall. I called my parents. The confession. My father's voice when I mentioned the loan. I'll remember that silence for the rest of my life. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of someone deciding how much to admit. Come home this weekend. We'll talk in person. There are phrases that tell you everything while appearing to say nothing. That was one of them. I drove the 2 hours to my parents' house on Saturday morning. I sat at the kitchen table I'd eaten every childhood meal at, with the same coffee mugs, the same chipped tile backsplash, the same view of the backyard where I'd learned to ride a bike. My father sat across from me. My mother stood near the counter. Both of them looked tired in a specific way, not sleep-deprived, but worn down by something they'd been carrying. My father talked for a long time. I let him. The story came out in pieces, the way confessions usually do, the parts most favorable to him first, then the harder admissions when it became clear I wasn't going to offer him an early exit. When I was 19, the business had finally collapsed after 2 years of struggling. The debt was overwhelming. My mother had needed a procedure that cost more than their insurance covered. They were months behind on the mortgage. No bank would lend to them, credit destroyed, income unstable. They'd exhausted every option they could think of. Except one. I was 19, still living at home, had never opened a credit card or taken out any debt. My credit file was essentially blank, which from a lender's perspective often registers as low risk. My documents were in the house: birth certificate, social security card, stored in the same filing cabinet they'd always used for family paperwork. My signature was on old school forms, insurance documents, things that could be studied and replicated. My father explained the mechanics of what they'd done the way you'd explain a decision you'd made under duress and had been privately justifying ever since. They'd applied for the loan using my identity, signed my name, taken the $28,000, and planned, sincerely planned, he insisted, to repay it before it ever affected my credit or my life. They were going to pay it down quietly and I would never have to know. My mother said, "It was an emergency. We had no choice. We did it to save the family home. For all of us. For you too." I looked at them both for a long moment before I spoke. "Why didn't you pay it back?" The unraveling. The explanations for why they hadn't repaid it were the kind of explanations that are technically true while being fundamentally dishonest. The economy. My father's health in the years after. My mother's job situation. Unexpected expenses. They'd made payments initially, enough to keep it from going delinquent immediately, and then the payments had become irregular, then stopped. They'd received collection notices but managed to avoid thinking too directly about whose name was on those notices. 7 years. They'd known for 7 years that my identity was tied to a growing debt, and they'd said nothing. I went home that night and started going through everything I could find about the original loan. Bank records, the years in question, any documentation I could access. I needed to know where the $28,000 had actually gone. The mortgage at the time wasn't $28,000 behind. Not even close. There had been debt, real pressure, but the number didn't line up with saving the house from imminent foreclosure. The money had gone into a general pool, some debt consolidation, yes, but also a used car purchase that same year. A family trip I now remembered vividly. We'd gone to a lake for a week, my parents, my sister, and me. New appliances for the kitchen that had replaced the old ones around the same time. It hadn't been emergency survival. It had been lifestyle maintenance. They'd committed identity fraud so they could keep living the way they wanted to live while telling themselves it was an act of family protection. They said, "We did it for the family." But they bought a car that year. Took a vacation. The money didn't save our home, it maintained their lifestyle while they used my identity as their bank. For the family is what you say when you can't say, for us. I went back to them with this. The second confrontation was harder than the first. I laid out the numbers. I showed them what I'd found. My father got defensive first, then went quiet. My mother cried, which would have worked on me once, and told me I didn't understand the pressure they were under. Maybe I didn't, but I understood what they'd bought with my name, and none of it was the house. I told them what I'd researched by then. What they'd done had a legal name. Identity theft, fraud, forgery, felonies. My mother said, "We gave you life. A loan isn't a crime against you." I said, "Signing my name without permission, taking $28,000 in my name, and destroying my credit is exactly a crime against me. Giving life doesn't include unlimited rights to steal from the life you gave." She didn't have an answer for that. Neither did my father. They pivoted instead to what they wanted me to do about it. The demands. Option A. I pay off the $37,000. You have a good job. You can handle this. Clean up the situation because that's what family does for each other. Option B. I transfer my apartment to them. They sell it, clear the debt with the proceeds, and keep whatever remains after the sale. I did the math on both, slowly, because I wanted to be precise. Option A meant paying $37,000 for money I never received, for a crime committed against me. On my salary, that was 3 to 4 years of aggressive payments. During those years, I'd be financially punished for my parents' decision while they faced no consequences. That wasn't resolution. That was absorbing someone else's sentence. They wanted me to transfer my $136,000 apartment to clear a $37,000 debt. They'd keep the remaining $99,000. They'd profit nearly 6 figures from stealing my identity. That's not resolution, that's rewarding fraud with a bonus. Option B was worse. Transfer an apartment I'd built my financial life around, that represented 5 years of disciplined sacrifice, to parents who had committed a felony against me. They'd clear $37,000 in debt, pocket approximately $99,000 after closing costs, and walk away from their crime not just unpunished but enriched. By nearly 6 figures. For stealing my identity. I called a lawyer. Update 1. The legal consultation. My lawyer is the kind of person whose clarity is almost uncomfortable. She doesn't soften things, which at the time was exactly what I needed. She confirmed everything I'd already suspected. What my parents had done met the legal definition of identity theft and fraud. Forging a signature on a loan document is a felony in most jurisdictions regardless of the relationship between parties. The fact that we were family was legally irrelevant. The fact that I'd been 19 and living in their house was legally irrelevant. They had taken money in my name without my consent. That was the whole thing. She also told me I had viable options for disputing the debt. With proper documentation of the fraud, a police report being the most useful instrument, I could potentially have the delinquent account disputed with the credit bureaus and removed or restructured. The collections agency had a legal obligation to investigate disputes of fraudulent origin. Then she said, "The challenge is that filing a police report initiates a process you may not be able to fully control. Prosecutors make their own decisions about charging. Even if you request leniency, depending on the amounts and documentation, charges could move forward." My lawyer said it's identity theft, a felony. But prosecuting means potentially sending my parents to jail. Not prosecuting means they face no consequences and I pay for their crime. There's no option where I'm not hurt. Only questions about who else gets hurt with me. I sat with that for a long time. My parents had done something criminal. That was now a fact I held with absolute clarity. And yet the idea of my father in handcuffs, my mother processing an arrest, not because I'd forgiven them, but because I understood what that would do to my sister, to extended family, to a structure that was already damaged and might not survive a direct blow, made the cleanest legal solution feel like something other than justice. There had to be another path. Update 2. The third option and the negotiation. My lawyer suggested a framework I hadn't considered. File a police report to formally document the fraud, establishing an official record of what had occurred, but request in writing that the prosecutor's office consider a deferred resolution contingent on a civil repayment agreement. Simultaneously, use the filed report to dispute the debt with the credit bureaus as fraudulent. And draft a formal acknowledgement document for my parents to sign. Written admission of what they had done, a repayment plan, and agreement that I bore no legal obligation for the debt. It wasn't perfect justice. But it was documented accountability without guaranteed incarceration. I presented this to my parents. My father's reaction was immediate. "You would file a police report against your own parents. You'd put us in the system. Over money." I said, "You committed identity theft against your own son. You put me in a collection system. Over money. I'm offering you a way out that doesn't include prison. You're upset I want a paper trail of what actually happened." My mother said they couldn't sign anything that made them look like criminals to anyone who might see it someday. I said, "You are criminals, legally speaking. The document doesn't make you criminals. You made you criminals. The document just describes what already exists." The negotiation took 3 weeks and 2 more lawyer consultations. My parents hired their own attorney who told them, privately, that their legal position was poor and that my offer was reasonable given what I could pursue. That information softened them in ways my arguments hadn't. The final agreement wasn't everything my lawyer wanted and wasn't the clean justice I'd imagined. My parents would not sign a formal criminal acknowledgement. But they agreed, in a document their attorney drafted and that I had my lawyer review, to assume responsibility for the debt and establish a payment plan. I would file a fraud dispute with the credit bureaus using the documentation I had. No police report would be filed unless they defaulted on the agreement. The apartment stayed mine. They resented every word of it. Update 3. Extended family and the rewriting of history. While the negotiation was ongoing, my parents had been making calls. Extended family received a version of events in which I had threatened to send my parents to jail over a misunderstanding and was choosing lawyers over family. Several relatives called me. Some were gentle about it. Some were not. "You can't do this to them. They're your parents. They made a mistake, but they're still your parents. Money isn't worth destroying your family." I explained the full situation to anyone who called and wanted the truth. The loan, the amount, the timeline, the demands for my apartment, the math on how they'd profit from my forgiveness. Some relatives went quiet after hearing it. Some apologized for calling. A few continued to believe that the parent-child relationship functionally exempted parents from accountability regardless of what they'd done. Extended family said, "Money isn't worth destroying your family." My parents destroyed my credit for money. They took $28,000 from my identity for money. They asked for my apartment, for money. But I'm the one who values money too much. The irony is invisible to everyone except me. My sister called twice. The first time she was crying, asking me not to report them, telling me she'd have nowhere to go if they were arrested. I told her I was trying to find a path that didn't end in arrest. I meant it. But I also recognized that my parents had almost certainly primed that call, that her fear was real but also instrumentalized. She was 23, dependent on them, and they had placed the consequences of their choices on her shoulders to hand to me. The second call she made was different. Quieter. She said, "Did they really take a loan in your name?" And when I confirmed it, she was silent for a long time, and then she said, "I didn't know." I believed her. The extended family pressure didn't change my decision. But it taught me something about how these situations work, that the person who refuses to absorb the consequences of someone else's crime is often framed as the aggressor, as the one destroying things, even when what's actually happening is that they're declining to participate in their own victimization. The optics of accountability are hard. The person standing their ground looks like the person swinging. Update 4. The payment arrangement and its first failures. We settled into an uneasy operational arrangement. My parents began making payments, $500 per month, toward the debt. I contribute $300 per month to cover the gap and accelerate payoff. Together, we clear roughly $800 per month. With the debt at $37,000 and shrinking, we're on a 4-year trajectory to clear it. I set up a tracking spreadsheet. I know the current balance to the dollar. I review it monthly. In the first 8 months, my parents missed payments twice. Once in month 4, a brief gap they said was caused by an unexpected car repair, and which I quietly covered to prevent further collection action and credit report damage. Once in month 7, same story, different expense. Both times they assumed I would cover it. Both times they were right, because the alternative was harm to my own credit situation. Both times no one apologized. I cover those gaps not because I've forgiven them, but because my credit is still partially tied to this account and I'm not willing to let their failures compound my situation further. It is the most unpleasant kind of pragmatism, the kind where you're doing something that benefits someone who wronged you because the alternative costs you more than it costs them. I changed my passwords. All of them. Security questions too. I moved sensitive documents out of any shared digital space. I put a credit freeze on my file with all 3 bureaus. I set up fraud alerts and account notifications that ping my phone immediately if anything new opens in my name. I changed all my passwords, froze my credit, stopped leaving documents at their house. My parents are now people I have to protect myself from. 26 years of trust, gone. They took more than $37,000. They took my ability to trust the people who raised me. That's the sentence I come back to most. Not the money. I can track the money, count it down, watch it shrink. The thing I can't quantify is the recalibration I've had to do for every interaction with them since. I visit less. I call out of obligation. When I'm there, I'm performing the role of son while internally being something more like a creditor managing a difficult account. The warmth has a different texture now. Careful. Supervised. They've never said, "We were wrong to steal your identity." Not once, in any direct language. What they've said is, "We're sorry things got to this point. We're sorry you were hurt. We wish things had been different." Each of those sentences makes them the passive object of circumstances rather than the active agents of a choice. They remain, even now, people who cannot say the clearest true thing: "We committed a crime against you." Update 5. 2 years later. We are, as of this writing, approximately halfway through the repayment. $18,500 paid down. $18,500 remaining. 2 more years at the current rate, assuming no further missed payments, which is not an assumption I make confidently, based on precedent. My credit has partially recovered. The dispute process removed some of the worst markers from my record. Others will remain, for a few more years until they age off the report. The apartment is secure. I've made additional payments on the mortgage, and my equity position is healthy. Financially, I'm going to be okay. The damage was real and measurable and is healing slowly, the way financial damage does. The relationship with my parents is what it is. Functional. Reduced. Present at holidays and birthdays because full severance would require an energy I don't have and a clarity I don't feel, because despite everything, they are still my parents, and that word contains history I can't simply file away. My father, when he talks about his health lately, sounds genuinely older than he used to. My mother called me last month and I could tell from her voice she wanted to talk, really talk, but neither of us knew how to get there from where we were standing, so we discussed ordinary things and hung up. Last week they sent a birthday card. No money, which is both appropriate and slightly absurd given the context. Just a card with their handwriting. "We love you. Happy birthday." I put it on the shelf in my bedroom, next to the laptop where I keep the payment tracker open. Love and theft, side by side. I look at both of them sometimes and think about what my parents believe they owe me and what they believe they've given me, and whether those 2 categories have ever, in their private accounting, overlapped. Resolution: the debt that won't clear. Here is the summary of what happened, as plainly as I can state it. My parents stole my identity when I was 19. They took out $28,000 in loans using my name, my social security number, and a forged version of my signature. They did this without my knowledge or consent. They spent the money on a mix of debt consolidation and things that were convenient rather than necessary. They told me nothing for 7 years, until collection letters made it impossible to continue hiding. By then, with interest and fees, the debt had grown to $37,000. Their proposed solutions: I pay all of it, or I transfer my $136,000 apartment to them so they can sell it, clear the debt, and keep the remaining $99,000. They wanted, in effect, to profit 6 figures from stealing my identity. I did neither. I fought for a third path that no one wanted to offer me. They didn't want accountability, and the legal system didn't offer easy mercy. I found the seam between those two things: documented acknowledgement, a shared repayment plan, credit dispute through fraud channels, no apartment transfer, no jail. An uneasy, imperfect arrangement that hurt me less than the alternatives while holding them to at least the minimum standard of bearing financial responsibility for their own actions. Mom said, "We gave you life. A loan isn't a crime against you." Actually, signing my name without permission, taking money in my name, and destroying my credit is exactly a crime against me. Giving life doesn't include unlimited rights to steal from the life you gave. The debt will be gone in approximately 2 years. My credit will fully recover in 3 to 4. The apartment is mine and will remain mine. The trust will not come back. That's the part that doesn't have a repayment timeline. My parents are not bad people in the full picture. They were desperate, and desperate people make decisions that clarity and comfort would never produce. I understand the fear they were living in when they made that choice. I can hold that understanding while also holding the knowledge that fear doesn't convert a crime into something else. Desperation explains. It does not excuse. I understand why they did it. I don't forgive what they did. Both of those things can be true at once, and in my experience they tend to be. Some debts clear. Some stay permanent entries in the ledger, not financial, not tracked in any spreadsheet, but real all the same. The version of my parents I believed in when I was 19 doesn't exist anymore. I know too much now. That knowledge cost me more than $37,000, and it cost me more than 4 years of payments. The apartment stays mine. The debt gets paid. The relationship survives in reduced, careful, permanently altered form. They gave me life. They remind me. They also stole from that life my credit, my security, my ability to believe without evidence that my parents would never deliberately harm me. Some gifts you can't repay. Some thefts you can't forgive. Both of those sentences live in my chest at the same time, and I've made my peace with the fact that they're going to live there together for a long time. The payment tracker says $18,500 remaining. The shelf holds a birthday card that says "We love you." I'm still their son. I'm also their victim. Neither of those things cancels the other. I've stopped waiting for them to.